We're in the second Sunday of Advent, and as I explained last week, I'm treating this in quite a different way than is traditional. And I'm basing this on what I call the four fundamentals of God: life, love, power, and intelligence. These are four qualities that we see and experience in the presence of God as we think of God. And so we're focusing on each one. And let me just go over again what the symbology of the wreath is as we have it up here. The evergreen wreath represents God as it's a complete circle. The evergreen represents the eternal, no beginning and no end. So we have the circle encompassing all of the 5 candles that we have. The white candle, the center, represents the soul. And the soul is the individualization of God. It is all of the qualities of life, love, power, and intelligence that we find in God, but individualized. And the soul becomes the basis then through which we interface with the three-dimensional world. So the candle that we lit last Sunday represents life, and it's green. And I chose that color for the color of the evergreen. We think of green for springtime and that we associate with life and so on. Today I lit the love candle, which is red or pink. And I should say, first of all, life and enthusiasm go together. Life is the fundamental of God, and it expresses through us as enthusiasm. When we say somebody is full of life, they're enthusiastic about something. And so we associate those two things. One is the fundamental. As we open ourselves to the presence of God as life, we naturally express more enthusiasm. And what we often do is make the mistake of directing our enthusiasm toward conditions. We want something to happen so we can get excited about it. And what we're dealing with here in this season, it's a very meditative approach, is we're opening ourselves to life with no particular objective other than just that. And as we do this, as we spend time in meditation on the idea of life, we open ourselves to that, and enthusiasm naturally rises. And then we take that enthusiasm into every aspect of our life, not just certain things. All aspects. That's our goal. That's our objective. And so we look at love this week, and I'll get into this, but love is associated with understanding. And I'm going to have to explain this a little better, which I'll do through the half hour we have here. I've had the most difficulty putting love in its proper perspective, and I'll explain that too. Because we're always told to love your neighbor, love this, love that. Love is an important expression, and it is. But we're going to think of it in a way that is more of a universal idea that I think you'll find maybe helpful. God is power, expresses through us as strength. We'll talk about that next week. And God is intelligence, which expresses through us as order, which we'll talk about on Sunday morning. On Christmas Eve morning. So I have explained this again, and I'll go over this quickly. If you think of God as the universal energy in which we live and move and have our being, and I like to think of God as the creative life force. We call God He, we try to call God She, we put these titles on God, but God is really an energy. It's like when we think of love, we don't think of a he or she necessarily. We've done this thanks to the Bible, which has made God a very masculine idea. And it's really something we have to get over, because we are living in this living energy. It's neither male nor female, but actually it's both. It's all. And it expresses as both. It expresses individually as both. But we don't want to get too hung up on that. we think of God as like the white light. And we don't see the breakdown. We, of course, see the breakdown of expressions of God all through nature. But in terms of our soul, in terms of us, the soul is made up of the same four fundamentals: life, love, power, and intelligence, but individualized in a way that then can be expressed. And we see that in the color spectrum. We see this breakdown occur. But the colors actually exist in the white light, and they exist in the soul, and they exist in the expression in the color spectrum. And I've got the full color spectrum here, but if you can just in your own mind make that translation to the four fundamentals, you get the idea. So we are receptors of God. We are God is our source. We draw from that, and the soul's purpose is to express in our own unique way how these four fundamentals come to us, how we understand them. And there's a lot of dynamics that are involved in how we express, but when we go to our source, we recognize God as our source, and we spend time, and I hope that you're engaged in some form of meditation through this Advent season, because that's what it is. It's an intuitive birthing process. And it's not really birthing in the sense as we normally think of it. It's an awakening to what is. You know, I showed the illustration last week of life. Showed the oak tree without any leaves on it, and then I showed another picture of one full of leaves. Life is present everywhere. It's present with the oak tree without leaves. It's present with the oak tree with leaves. But the tree or the environment doesn't allow that life to express. It is hampered in a sense. The expression of the life is hampered by the environment. But life itself is present. We could actually say, if we ask the question, is there life on Mars? We've been asking that for a long time. The answer is absolutely yes. There is life on Mars. The question is, are there life forms on Mars? And we have to answer none that we found yet. So we're making a distinction between something that is changeless, the presence of God, and something that expresses. And that changes all the time. It is important for us to, as individuals, to be grounded in our source. That's what the whole spiritual path is about. It's about being anchored in what we are at the deepest level. And as we spend time in meditation, we drop our attention, our awareness down to the center of our being. We find that. We find and experience that changeless reality that we call God, but it's different than what most people think of as God. It's not a thing up in the sky. It's a thing we see everywhere as it begins to open up in us. But it's not something that's created. And it's not something that comes about if we're good or bad. Doesn't come about if we're good and withheld if we're bad. It's always present. The question is the environment through which it expresses, that's my consciousness, is it prepared to receive this awakening, this inner process? And so I think it's good to create rituals that, on a personal level, that help us do that remind us to do that. Because it's so easy to go through life and get so involved in external things and look to the future, look down that road that we're on and think that I'll feel better down there someplace. I'll be a better person. I'll be more than I am today. And what I've emphasized over the last many years now is that you are all you will ever be. That life is pressing in upon you creative life force that is God is pressing in upon you, just like the life presses upon the leafless tree. The question is my environment, my consciousness, aligned with that presence enough to let it express through me? Can I become a prism? That's what I am asking myself. And actually, that's what I am. I don't have to become that. That's what I am. I am created to be an expressor, but a converter of the unseen to the seen. That's all of our job. And there are no guidelines on how we do that. We can express in any way we want. But we do express in ways that are in accordance with the way the process works, the way nature works, the way the natural law unfolds through us. And that's what we're looking at today. Love. And this is where love comes in. But forget everything you think you know about love for a moment. Let's not think of it as a personal thing, in a personal way. We'll get to that. We'll pick that up again later. But we're thinking of love today as a fundamental of God. In other words, God doesn't love, God is love. And there's a difference. It's like if God loves, then maybe God can be unloving. God could withhold love from me. But if God is love and God is omnipresent, love can never disappear. Love can never be less. I can shut myself down to that process of love. But we're going to think of love here as working for the highest good of all concerned, sometimes attracting, sometimes repelling or dissolving, depending on how the highest good is to manifest. And I really like this, because if you declare that divine love is working through me now, you're saying that I am willing to let love dissolve the things that are standing in my spiritual path, in the way of my spiritual path. And I'm willing to let love draw to me that which will enhance that process. It's a whole different thing. When you think of loving another person, you do the same thing. You see that in their life there's this power of love at work that is drawing to them the highest, the best for them. And it is dissolving the thing that is standing in their way. This is the only way I know how to love my neighbor as myself. Because I've had some neighbors I really don't like, and let alone love. And it would be hypocritical of me to say I love them in the way I think of as love. I'm not speaking necessarily of any particular neighbor or neighbor per se, just other people. And we put Jesus out there as this standard. You know, he said, love your enemy. But he had a number of enemies. And we have some records of how he treated them. He didn't like Pharisees and scribes. He didn't like the bureaucrats, the lawyers. And he referred to them as whitewashed tombs full of dead men's bones. Tell your neighbor that. That doesn't sound real loving. He also referred to them as vipers, brood of vipers, scorpions. I'm not sure which Jesus I'm supposed to obey. But I understand that if I am hung up on somebody, if I am going over and over and over in my mind that I would like something done to them because they've been so nasty, I can see how that interrupts my own experience. how it robs me of peace. So if I love them, in the sense that I'm talking about, if I look at them and I say, I don't like you, I don't agree with you, but I put you in a place where I can accept that that which is for your highest good is being drawn to you now, that you're drawing that to you now, and that which is standing in your way is now dissolving. I can do that. And it may be my relationship with that particular neighbor is the thing that needs to dissolve. It's okay. But that actually allows me to rise above my personal feelings. And that's what love is. It's universal. And it actually feels good to be able to do that. And it may take a little effort. But for me to try to go out and pretend like I'm in love with someone that I can hardly stand, it's hypocritical. And all it does is add more problems, more weight to what I'm trying to achieve. Because here I'm saying I'm supposed to love and I'm not feeling so loving. So there's something wrong with me. I'm not evolved. I'm not where I ought to be at a spiritual level. And so I heap condemnation upon myself, and that's not a good thing. But love would dissolve that. Love would draw to me that which is for my highest good, and it may be a thought like this, like I'm discussing right now. This may be the way love works for me, that it gives me another way to think of things. It draws to me ideas. It draws to me opportunities. It draws to me inspiration. So I can see that what it's drawing to me is working for my highest good. It's a way to be free. And it's actually dissolving the things that are standing in my way. And what might it be dissolving? Maybe it's dissolving the belief that I have to love this person in a way that I can't do, or I'm not willing to do at this moment. That's the whole concept, perhaps, that it needs to dissolve. It's a false concept. I can't do that. That's me at a personal level, trying to act like a god, and I can't do that. But I can let love do that. I can let love work through me to dissolve that which is not for my highest good. So many of our religious convictions are not for our highest good. We have a lot of beliefs that keep us waiting. And they are authorized by the authority, the religious authority of our life. We're told to do this. We're told to love our neighbor, but we all know we can't do that. We all know there are people that we just cannot love. If you don't believe it, just look at those who are against you politically. Do you feel warm and fuzzy about them? But you can let them go, can't you? You can let them go and let love work through them in ways that draw their highest good and release that which stands in their way. But don't pray for their conversion, because that's not what it's about. It's about letting them go. And as you're able to see that, you're also able to let go. It's not your job to correct them, to agree or disagree. Love draws to us that which is for our highest good and dissolves that which is not. Just holding that thought as you go through your day, you think, love is working through me right now, drawing to me that which is for my highest good and dissolving that which is not. It's a pretty powerful awareness. If you're at odds with someone, just make that same type of statement in this relationship. Love is doing its perfect work. It's drawing to all of us that which is for our highest good and dissolving that which is not. It helps you step back and take a larger view of what's going on. Love. Whether love attracts or dissolves is not a decision we make. And that's, if you think about that, that's kind of a relief. I don't have to draw anything. I don't have to invoke the law of attraction. I don't have to visualize. I don't have to do things I normally think I have to do and hope they work. Our job is simply to know and to live as if it is true. Whether love attracts or dissolves is not a decision we make. Our job is simply to know and to live as if this is true. I pointed out many times that the Aramaic word for prayer is slotha, and it means to make an adjustment. That's what we're talking about. It's not our decision as to how love works through us, if it dissolves or attracts or dissolves, either way. That we are to adjust to the fact that it's happening right now. Right now, love is dissolving that which is standing in my way and attracting to me that which is for my highest good. If you think of that as going on at this very moment, whatever you're going through, it's a pretty profound thought. You're adjusting to that higher principle. It's not I, but the Father in me who does the works. It's the same idea. The Father is greater. We'll say love. Love is greater. So whether love attracts or dissolves is not a decision we make. So you can just feel the letting go in that statement. I don't have to make this decision as to how. But what's interesting is something that is being dissolved may be something that you think is quite sacred, something you think is quite important. And you're trying to hang on and protect, cling to it. Yet everything that happens seems to be knocking it down, pulling it away. And you're saying, no, everything but that. And then when that changes, something greater opens up, but you could not see it as long as you were hanging on to it. It's a pretty interesting process. It's a very difficult process. It's a scary process. Trusting God is a scary process. Trusting love is a scary process. It's scary to the self-image. The soul is right at home with the whole thing. It's been saying all along, you got to get with the program. Fighting this thing is not part of the process. It's knowing that there is action taking place. That which is for my highest good is now being drawn. That which is not is being dissolved. Okay, so the thing I think is so important looks like it's being dissolved. I let it go. And what needs to dissolve in me is not so much the condition, not so much the thing itself, but my clinging to it. That's what needs to dissolve. It's me saying, I can't live without this. I'll be less of a person. Something will be ruined in my life if I lose this thing. Sometimes the way to find out that that is not true is to lose it. Sometimes we don't find our strength until we're so weak we don't know which way is up. We find strength in weakness. And that's because we stop trusting our self-image, our own efforts. And we get to the point where we have no choice but to trust something greater than ourselves, greater than our egos, greater than our self-image. And if we think of it as love, trust love, it makes it a lot easier, I think. It feels a lot better to just be aware that love is now working through me right now in the way that we're talking about. Love lifts our vision in a way that imparts the understanding to see and know what needs to be done. And that's another interesting aspect of clinging to a thing, clinging to a specific outcome, is it sometimes keeps our vision too low. We can't see the whole picture. But if you say, okay, if this thing has to go, I'm willing. Remember Abraham becoming willing to sacrifice his son? We don't have to do that. But it's the willingness that allows us to see the larger picture, to let go. It's a pretty barbaric story. But the principle is not. The principle is valid. If we have to have something, we'll probably lose it. And the reason for that is because your soul doesn't have to have anything. Your soul is complete. But if you are saying, I am incomplete, and without this, I'm lost, you may lose it just to prove that you don't need it. And that may be difficult. Nobody said this whole process is easy, because it's not. But if we see love is what is at work, love is dissolving, love is attracting, and we'll get into the idea of intelligence later on, it's not randomly. But let's look at another idea, the meaning of highest good. What is highest good? The highest good is that which allows further expression of God. When you are tied in 25 knots, do you feel like you're expressing God in the highest way possible? I don't. As I let go, and sometimes just out of total exhaustion, I always feel better. My highest good is that flow, that ability of the infinite to shine through me like the white light shines through the prism and shine out into the world. When I'm tied in knots, it frustrates that process. It's like putting, well, as Paul said, we see through a glass darkly. It's like smudging the prism with something where it doesn't allow the light to shine out. The light's always there, but the prism has become blocked, has become smudged. So the highest good is that which allows further expression of God. And we're not talking about things. We're talking about a state of being, a state of mind. When you are feeling your best, you're most enthusiastic, you're most understanding. It's when you're hurting that you're not so understanding, not so enthusiastic. You pull into yourself and protect yourself. So that's what we want to achieve, and we want to let go of those things or allow those things in our lives that block this process to be dissolved. And again, by attracting things that are for highest good, think in terms of thought, perception, perspective. What is the highest way I can look at this? And love in this sense clears our mind. When we are holding thoughts of love in this sense, not that God loves me, although that's got its healing aspects too, because some people have thought God is so disgusted with them that God couldn't possibly love them. If you need to start there, fine. But there is a higher way to think of this. God doesn't love or not love. God is love. And God always loves you, loves all of us, because God expresses as love through us. Are we expressing love? Are we giving way to love? That's the question. It's never a question of, is love present? It's always present. Okay, so we have some affirmations for love and understanding. Let me say these first, as I did last week, and then join me in speaking them aloud. I am guided by the understanding that love imparts. Together? I am guided by the understanding that love imparts. Love is my essence. Love is my being. Together. Love is my essence. Love is my being. Love is the balancing action in all my relationships and all conditions in my life. Very important idea. Together. Love is the balancing action in all my relationships and all conditions in my life. And as I said last week, all of this is on the back of your program. I would suggest you take it home, spend 30 minutes to an hour a day through this Advent time in meditation, meditating on these ideas, and the instructions are on the back of your program. And if you want to get deeper into the meditation process, in my book, The Complete Soul, there's a chapter toward the end about meditative examples, or examples of meditation, different kinds, different ways to approach it. So I'd recommend taking a look at that if you feel uncomfortable with this whole process. But that's what we're doing. We are opening ourselves through this process. It's an intuitive opening. The intellect is doing just fine. It's got all these ideas, and many of them are causing problems. So we want to open ourselves intuitively to this presence and learn from the inside out what it wants to do through us. And that's love's job, is to dissolve that which is not for our highest good, ideas, conditions, relationships, and to attract that which is. And love is at work in my life right now, your life right now. All right? Thanks for coming out, and we'll see you next week.